everyone, welcome back to RetroComms. Today I have a question for you. A question that surely you have been asked, or maybe you were the one who was doing the asking, at some point in your life. Got any games on your phone? What if I told you that before PUBG Mobile, before Words with Friends, before Angry Birds even, that the answer to that question might have been yes, depending on who you asked and what sort of phone they had. That's right, back in the days of the feature phone, there was still some fun to be had with mobile gaming. It wasn't as high-res, as much graphical fidelity as you might know today, as the hardware of the time was much less powerful than what we now use. But let's take a moment to look back on what those options might have been. Let's start off with a classic. Well, or at least this version of a classic, Snake 2, which is very close to the original version, except you can go through the walls on the game board, or the playfield, however you want to call it. Now, these direction keys and the way they're oriented truthfully don't make much sense to me. Or at least when the snake is heading in certain directions. Now it seems to be, nope, the leftmost turned me right. Okay, I think I get it now. The more you play, the more you get the hang of it, and the use of sort of limited control without a full D-pad on this Nokia 3330, which is just the US variant of the 3310. Once you get used to it, it becomes second nature. And we know how this one works, so no need to continue there. Next up, let's talk about Java Brew apps, or JAR apps. We'll start off with my Motorola Razr V3C on Autel. This was my daily for quite some time when I was younger. Here we had Ghouls and Ghosts, Bookworm, and DDR3D. Let's start off with a little Ghouls and Ghosts, just to show you this experience. This is a game from the 16-bit era. Can't remember where I left off. Press forward to advance and press the center button to attack. You jump with the up key, maybe? No. 2. Oh. Whoops. Uh-oh. Okay, 1 to jump back, maybe 3 to jump forward. There we go. Those controls can take a bit of... And I'm dead. But you see how it is. Now how about something that was released on a more modern console? For better or for worse, let me show you how bad Dance Dance Revolution on a phone is. This was a mistake. I loved DDR on the PS2, but on the phone, I really should have gotten Tetris or Zuma or something else more suited. Just selecting the first song here. And I'm not doing so well. Haven't even gotten a combo. That's enough of that. That was a common theme among anything ported over or some spin-off app that came from a game that was designed to be played on a home console. Let me show you another fine specimen. Does anyone remember Need for Speed Carbon? These brew apps originally ranged in size from 100 to 300 megabytes. Carbon on the PS2 was around 4 gigabytes. A little bit of sound, not too loud, just so you can hear what they've done with the soundtrack. If you hadn't played the original NFS Carbon released on a home console, you wouldn't know what they were going for here. Let's just get right to the gameplay. And here you have it, Need for Speed Carbon on a Motorola Pebble U9. I think this is a Pebble. Certainly shares the design language. But instead of a 3D racing game with quite advanced graphics for the time, we're left with something that resembles Pole Position more closely, which is a game from the Atari 2600 days, an arcade type game. I'm better at the actual console version of NFS Carbon. Don't let this little playtest be any indicator of my skills. That's enough of that. And now let's talk about how one could obtain these apps. Traditionally, they were purchased and downloaded over the air via an app store that came preloaded onto the phone, but these days those services are no longer functional. But it may be of comfort to you to know that you can transfer apps to these devices via Bluetooth. I had Tetris open a while ago, but I'll close out of that just to show you I have Bejeweled, Tetris, and Zuma. Puzzle games like this are great as games to be played on a mobile phone from this era. Nothing too advanced, something nice and simple, quick to pick up, and something that can be played for quite a while. I'll show you Tetris up and running. This application was transferred to this phone via Bluetooth after downloading from various websites. Can't go into that here, as I'm sure you know. But we'll start with this just to show you that it is functional. Now you have to be careful downloading apps online because only certain apps will work with certain devices. It's dependent on the screen resolution, it's dependent on how much storage your device has, as well as the manufacturer and what sort of hardware was in use on that device. But let's just clear a couple more lines, just as a proof of concept. And Tetris is a game I genuinely enjoy playing. But that's enough of that. Surely you know how this works. But the reason I chose this device to test Bluetooth Brew apps or jar files was because this is a refurbished Motorola V3i. If something happens to it, that would be sad, but this device has already seen some things. So it wouldn't be the worst if I had somehow downloaded a bad jar file and something went horribly wrong. Next up, we have the Nokia N-Gage, specifically the QD variant. One look at this device, and you can tell that it was designed with gaming in mind. So let's see it in action. Can it do any better than some of these other handsets? I had a 3D version of Snake running. Now this is much more intuitive with this D-pad. Oh, and the snake ate its own tail. I was doing better at this earlier. Let's have a look around this device, because we can see that it did perform better than some others and has a great in-hand feel. It could also download jar apps, brew apps via Bluetooth, but some dedicated games for it were produced. I believe they slotted in right here. Either that or this was a port for an MMC card, which is very similar to an SD in dimensions, but is limited in capacity, and they are not cross-compatible. So unfortunately, I don't have a memory card to expand this specific device. Maybe one day, though. And no video on gaming handsets would be complete without a discussion of the Sony Xperia Play. Now, unfortunately, mine isn't functional. I've shown this off in a couple of other instances. Got a busted digitizer. It could play your standard fare Android games like Angry Birds, Greedy Spiders, maybe some earlier version of the Asphalt series. But Sony also released some PlayStation 1 conversions that worked well on here. And unlike the PSP, it had 2 analog sticks, but unfortunately they're analog sensors, which that's still a great improvement from controls on some mobile devices, but just my only little gripe with the design of the Xperia Play. Very minor though. This is a great device, and I wish that I could show you its full functionality. Maybe one day I'll get this thing repaired. And speaking of repairs, I was going to pull out my Droid 2 Global and show you the earlier Android games that I had installed that I had been playing at the time that I was using that device. But unfortunately, I open it up, I take it out of its box, I put in a battery, and lo and behold, the digitizer has stopped functioning properly. So that one will need repairs in the near future. That about wraps it up for this one. So tell me, what were your favorite games on phones of this era? Are there any older Android games that you're nostalgic about? Are there any games or apps you would like to see me play more of or have a deeper look into? Share your thoughts with me down in the comments below, and feel free to check out my channel and my Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is RetroComms, signing off.